It was supposed to be a quiet Sunday dinner, just like the dozens that came before. Simple, predictable, with roast chicken and potatoes, and a side of silence that we'd grown used to. I'd settled into the habit of these dinners, knowing the routine. Delilah would sip her wine with that tight-lipped smile. Sierra would scroll on her phone between bites, and I'd pretend everything was fine. But tonight felt different, like the air itself carried a static charge that threatened to ignite. Delilah sat across from me, in the same chair she'd claimed for years, her posture too perfect, her eyes too sharp. Sierra, 17, and already armed with her mother's disdain, twirled a strand of hair and eyed me like I was the punchline to a joke. Tried to focus on the food, on the way the chicken skin glistened under the overhead light, on the potatoes that smelled like butter and rosemary. But my appetite faded fast. Delilah set her wine glass down with a small, deliberate click. The sound, somehow louder than the old clock ticking in the background. She cleared her throat. The practiced way she did when she was about to drop a verdict she'd been rehearsing all day. "We're cutting you off, completely." Her voice was flat, but her eyes, alive with a cold certainty, like a guillotine's blade coming down. No anger, just finality. I didn't flinch, I didn't even breathe. I watched her lips, that perfect line of lipstick she always wore when she wanted to feel powerful. Sierra didn't even look to her mother for permission. Didn't hesitate. "You're poor, lazy, and not a good father." She said it as casually as if she were ordering a coffee. She didn't blink. She didn't fidget. She'd been waiting for this moment, ready to brand me with labels that stuck like tar. I felt the room shrink, the table suddenly too small for all the unspoken words crammed between us. I looked at them, my wife and my daughter, sitting like they'd been cast from the same mold, both wearing that same expression that said, "We've decided what you are." And, that's the end of it. I thought about the days I'd worked double shifts to keep food on this table, about the nights I'd come home smelling like oil and sweat, my hands cracked from labor, just to see them asleep with the lights left on. I thought about the time I taught Sierra to ride her bike in this very driveway, running alongside her with her laughter echoing through the neighborhood like I was the best father in the world. But none of that mattered now. They'd made up their minds, sealed the file, passed, judgment. I could have stood up, slammed my hands on the table, demanded they remember. But what was the point? Words had no place here, not now. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed on the table. It wasn't loud, but it sliced through the tension like a blade. I reached for it, my fingers trembling just slightly, a reflex born from too many late-night work calls that always carried bad news. But this wasn't that. "Mr. Forbidden?" The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, but tinged with something I hadn't heard before. "Excitement. Your company's stock just hit 100 million. I blinked, staring at the phone as if it had grown wings. My mind raced, through the math, the milestones, the blood and sweat I'd poured into Triarch Systems, the nights I'd sat up coding while Delilah slept. 100 million. My chest tightened, my breath caught, and I almost laughed, not out of humor, but out of something deeper, something that felt like a rope snapping free from my chest. I looked up at them. Delilah's fork hovered mid-air, her eyes wide, her face frozen in that perfect mask of composure, cracking. Sierra's hands stopped mid-scroll, her eyes blinking, like she'd just woken from a dream. The room fell silent. I didn't need to say a word, but I did. I lifted my eyes slowly, let them rest on Delilah first, then on Sierra. I saw the confusion swirling in their eyes, the sudden realization that the man they'd written off as poor, lazy, and worthless had just become something else, something they didn't know how to handle. "Excuse me," I said softly, my voice steady, every syllable deliberate. You were saying something? It was like the table itself shuddered. Delilah's lips parted, but no words came out. Sierra's face lost its practiced smirk. I let the silence hang there, like a weight they'd have to carry themselves. I felt something shift inside me. Something uncoiling, like I'd been holding my breath for too many years, and finally remembered how to let it out. I wanted to stand up and walk out, but I didn't. I wanted them to sit there, in the space they created, to feel every second of their own silence. I wanted them to understand what they'd done and what they lost. So I just sat there, watching them, the man they thought they could cut off, the man they thought they could belittle into submission. My phone screen still glowed, the numbers dancing like a promise I'd kept to myself. $1 million, it was supposed to be a quiet Sunday dinner. But it turned out to be the night everything changed, the night I realized that the approval I'd been chasing for so long had always been conditional, that their love had strings, tied to my income, my success, my failures, and in that moment, I didn't feel poor or lazy or worthless. I felt free. Never bothered to read the fine print, the line that gave me discretion to restructure terms as the controlling signatory. She'd never asked what I was really doing every night in this room, poring over spreadsheets and pension ledgers like they were holy texts. The Pyncheon system was a living, breathing thing, a tangled mass of dependencies and clauses that could make or break a person, if you knew where to look, and I knew exactly where to look. Every late night at the office, every coffee run to the accounting team, every innocent question I'd asked Monroe about the pension plan. They all added up. I'd built a blueprint in my mind, each detail, a weapon she'd never see coming. That was my real job, the one she couldn't grasp. Building a fortress of knowledge, one clause at a time. I remembered the day she told her mother about leaving teaching. "He's such a good man," she'd said, smiling like I was a child who'd just tied his own shoes. "He set me up with benefits so I could chase my dreams. That's what a supportive husband does." Her mother had smirked, the same way Belle did when she thought she was winning. Well, let's hope his support holds up. I'd sat at the table that night, nodding like the devoted husband, letting them think I was grateful to be part of their show. But inside, I'd already seen the plan. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every clause that governed early payouts. I drafted some of them myself, long before she ever thought